What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So welcome to part 2 of my big Bakugan overview and my honest thoughts about the game in general. So if you haven't already seen part 1, I'd highly recommend checking it out because I kind of went into the very basics of the game. We still are, but I'm getting a lot more in depth as the video progresses. So I'd highly recommend checking out part 1 before watching this one. So without further ado, let's get right back into it. One thing I was really concerned about was the Bakugan themselves, because this, at first it kind of seems like it might have a huge degree of luck or variance to it as to whether or not you can roll and then they open up, or whether or not they will do that, or all these different things. I was really concerned that that might kind of be the Achilles heel of this game, but after playing it for the amount of time that I did, I actually don't feel that way whatsoever. I actually think there's a very large degree of skill when it comes to this for specific reasons. So when we first got our kits and we were like playing we were missing the Bakugan from opening very often, but by the end of the weekend, we were all getting them to hit fairly consistently, and that just goes to show that there is a skill gap there. So if you actually take the time to try and learn to be able to roll better or to spin the Bakugan in specific ways on the table so that they do specific moves, or that you know where the magnets are in the Bakugan to be able to open them to trigger, or you just know your distances or different things like that, I actually think that's what's going to separate some of like the average players from the very good players. And even though it may like seem like it's a degree of variance from the start, the more you start to learn and understand, and the better you get at rolling and practicing the Bakugan, I think that actually makes the skill gap a lot wider, which is a good thing because it's very easy to play, but then it's like a hard to master type of dynamic. So I was actually very impressed by that, even though it, like I said, it seems like it's weird at first, but the more you play it, the more you start to understand that, oh, okay, there's actually a lot of skill involved here. And you can do like trick shots and stuff. Sometimes you want to roll the Bakugan really hard to knock theirs away so it never touches any of the cores, and then it'll trigger yours, and then you're gonna get a free attack in. So there's a lot of different tricks you can do, and we started to learn more and more about that the more playtime we got with the game. So getting to the combat. So basically what happens is you and your opponent are both gonna pick up your Bakugan, and you're gonna go ahead and pretty much count down from like 3 to like 3, 2, 1 or 3, 2, 1, go. And on that, you're both gonna roll them or do your trick shot or whatever at the same time. And when that happens, one of 3 outcomes is going to occur. The first outcome is that both of you roll them and neither of them pop open. That happens sometimes. You might just both completely miss, or like you just both like barely just missed it, like triggering something like that, and then you just hand it back to each other and you go again. The second outcome is that one player's opens and the other doesn't. This is like what I said, where there's this element of skill because maybe you roll yours really hard to knock theirs away and then yours pops open, or maybe yours just happens to pop open and theirs doesn't because you happen to roll better. So what happens in that instance is that you basically get to direct attack your opponent. So going back to what a Bakugan card looks like, since your opponent doesn't have a Bakugan to battle with, you basically just get to hit them with the damage rating of whatever the Bakugan says. So like for instance, if it says 5, you basically just get to hit them for 5 damage. Now the thing is, there are cards that can like lower the damage that you might take at the cost of some energy, so there are some defensive mechanics there. So for instance, the green color has a lot of these cards that lower damage to help you stay alive, but for my deck, the blue, the red, and the white, there wasn't really too many cards that mitigated damage, so it really depends on which colors you're in for what different types of things you can do. But there is still some counterplay to help you just not just take a ton of damage without feeling like you have nothing that's in your control. So that's what happens in that scenario. But the third scenario is that both Bakugan open, and that's where it gets really fun because now you actually get to battle. You may notice there's another number on the left side of the Bakugan card, and that is their B power. This is like their attack value for us who play Yu-Gi-Oh! And so basically, you're going to get to the point where both of these Bakugan are going to fight, and obviously the one with the higher attack power, or the B power rather, is going to win. Now this is where it gets fun because if both of them open, let's say one Bakugan has like 500 B power and another one has 700. Well, you have the decision at this point whether or not you want to say, okay, do I want to let this attack go through, take some damage, and not waste any of my resources, Or do I want to use some energy and actually pump up my Bakugan so that I win this battle, and that way I just have a little bit of an advantage because I dealt damage to my opponent? There's a lot of like strategic decision making because it's kind of like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic or any other card game where you want to use your life total as a resource because sometimes you just want to take the hits because you don't want to waste cards. But it's different because your life is your deck, so you're actually losing cards in the process. So you really have to weigh whether or not it's worth it for you to go about wasting your cards and doing that. And since everything is at quick effect or instant speed, there's a lot of really cool tricks you can do to kind of mess with things and pretty much just kind of modify the values of things, take away from your opponents, add to yours. And a lot of the cards pretty much kind of revolve around these little battle mechanics to see which Bakugan will come out on top. One set of cards in particular are the Evo cards. So these are like evolutions of the Bakugan that you get to play. And so there are some cards that just modify the B power of a specific Bakugan, and that's really all they do. But these cards, each Bakugan has its own specific card like you see here. You just overlay it on top of that, and then it's like a permanent, upgrade. And this is really good because it incentivizes you to play these cards early, because then when you get to use these Bakugan again, they have these increased stats. So it's like you got a permanent buff rather than just a buff for a single turn. So the Evos are very, very strong, and they have some crazy broken effects as well. Like there's one that I had that it went from being 300 B power and 5 damage to like 800 B power and 8 damage, and then also had the ability to do even more damage than that. So that's just like, it's just crazy, and if you can pull it off, it's really, really good. So the Evos are really nice, and again, these are also quick effects or instant, so you could play these when you're trying to decide the combat to try to make your Bakugan have higher power. And then you can just throw on other buffs and things like that. It gets really, really crazy, and that's where a lot of the fun is. There's always like this constant interaction with your opponent, and I kind of like that because I think that's because of the shared turns. You always want to be doing something. Now, the biggest and probably the most hype part about this game is when you get to the team attack. So, as I said before, you're trying to have your Bakugan win battles so that you can have your opponent mill cards, because that's how you win the game. So you have 3 Bakugan. So let's say you have one that had 7 damage win a fight. Let's say you had your second Bakugan that had 6 damage win the second fight. And let's say you had your third one with 5 damage win the third fight. Well, because you had each of them win a fight, once you have one win, it can't be used again until you use your other ones that are still closed. When you get to that third Bakugan and it wins that battle, it doesn't just apply its damage rating, it does what's called a team attack, where it adds the values of all of the damage ratings of all 3 of your Bakugan in one attack. So instead of 5, you do 5 plus 7 plus 6, which is 18. Not to mention, some of the Baku cores have abilities to buff damage, so you could do like 20, 22, 24, and you have cards in your hand that could also buff your damage as well. So it's really not unrealistic to do like 30, 40 damage in a single team attack, which if you haven't been paying attention, that's like 80 to 100% of one player's deck. So yeah, the team attacks are super, super fucking hype. And if you manage to pull one off, more likely than not, you have a really good chance at winning, but there is some counterplay to that, and that's what I want to talk about now, and that's where the flip cards come in. So flip cards are cards that are very defensive. These are cards that trigger when they're sent to the graveyard to calculate damage. So if you guys have ever played Vanguard, I think it's kind of like this. So let's say you take 5 damage from an attack. You flip the cards from the top of your deck over one at a time. And if you happen to hit a flip card, which is really easy to notice because they're actually horizontally justified, not vertical like a traditional card, you have the option to activate that card. Now, most of these have an energy cost. There's a few that cost 0, but they're very narrow in their application. So what you can do is, for instance, there's one that it costs 1 energy and you get to draw a card. So that seems like a really good card because it's actually a +1 in terms of card advantage. but it's kind of like your opponent got like extra value out of you because it's like they did 6 damage instead of 5 because you drew a card. Even though, you know, you got the card in your hand rather than the graveyard, that's just one example though. The best card, or at least the best flip card that I found were the stops. Now, the stops are insane because essentially, if you happen to hit one of these while you're taking damage, it will stop the rest of the damage that you will take for the rest of that combat. So let's say, for instance, your opponent does a team attack of like 32 damage, right? So that means you're gonna mill 32 cards. Well, for instance, one of these stops basically says it will stop the attack of a non-red Bakugan. So let's say you're being attacked by a white one just for hypothetical sake. If you hit that flip card on like the 3rd card on your deck, all you have to do is pay the energy cost, which in this case is 3, and you don't take any other damage for the rest of the turn. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So having these cards is essential because when you're about to take like 14 or 16 damage from like one Bakugan or a massive team attack that's in like the 20s, 30s, I think someone managed to get to 40 this weekend, just once though, then having these stops is critical because otherwise you're not going to have any way to stop the damage coming in and you're probably just going to lose. So it's actually really simple. You know, you're just drawing cards, you're battling your Bakugan, trying to get to the team attack to get a ton of damage in, and the games actually don't last too long. I'd say the games are lasting about 10-15 minutes on average, just depending on how fast of damage you are able to output. Some decks are able to do it faster than others. All decks have like their own unique strategy with their color affiliation, like any other card game, so that makes sense. But one thing that I really liked about this game the most, that's really different from any other card game I've played, there's always this constant interaction. There's really no downtime in this game, and you're always doing something. Like, you're always, you know, figuring out which Bakugan you want to use next. You're always looking at which cards are going to make sense for the best situation. You're kind of planning a few turns ahead. You know, there's always something kind of going on. You're always making sure that you and your opponent are ready to do things at the same time. And having that constant interaction with your opponent, I think, is rather fun because that's kind of what a game is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be this fun way to engage with another person in some sort of activity, and I think they actually captured that in this game rather well. Coming from Yu-Gi-Oh, where there'll be 10-15 minute turns where one player's doing whatever they want and the other player's just sitting there just like twiddling their thumbs. Yeah, it's really nice to play something where you're always constantly engaging. I think the only time, realistically, you're not doing anything is when one player just finished a team attack and you have to put all 3 of your Bakugan back together because you reset all 3 of them and then you get to choose which ones you want to use again to build up to another team attack. That can take like a minute because some of the more intricate ones take a little bit longer to assemble together, but even during that downtime, you still want to be constantly like reevaluating your decisions, and it's not that much downtime compared to some other games that we've definitely seen in the past. So overall, I really enjoyed the game a lot. And yeah, I know I won the whole tournament that we played there, so I guess I'm a little bit biased, but honestly, I just wanted to just share my entire thoughts with you on how the game kind of works, and I can give you some more in-depth details and show you guys my deck that I played as well, kind of give you some more background on my thought process as to what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, and things I tried to work out in a very short time span to go ahead and take that event. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this. I'm not sure if this is going to be like a 1 or 2 part video because I think we're at like over the 20-minute mark for sure. So if this doesn't really interest you, I want to just kind of break it down into 2 smaller parts. But I really hope you guys enjoy this. I know I had a ton of fun, and I really just wanted to thank each and every one of you guys from the bottom of my heart, because honestly, if we hadn't built this channel to the place where it was now, I don't think I would have had this opportunity, and that's really thanks to you guys, and I'm forever going to be grateful to each and every one of you. Don't worry, there's not going to be like this massive like unloading of Bakugan content coming. I might, you know, pursue it in the future, who knows, but for now, I just wanted to share my initial thoughts with you guys and really see what you guys have to think down in the comments below as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you really love the content that I produce, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because it's thanks to the support of each and every one of you that I'm able to bring you this content on a daily basis. So thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time.